Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show on News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM KFYO. Joining me on the phones this morning, the senior senator from our great state of Texas, Senator John Cornyn. Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Chad. Good to be with you.
Always glad to have you, sir. Let's start off with all is not calm in Washington, D.C. It seems as though President Trump and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi aren't exactly getting along these days. House Speaker Pelosi accused the president of a cover-up this week. What is your reaction to all of this and the ongoing investigations into the investigations that already took place of the president? What's going on here in D.C.?
Well, I think all of this is a sideshow in a lot of ways. What it does represent is the disappointment that Nancy Pelosi is feeling over the outcome not only of the 2016 election, but of the Mueller investigation that took 2 years and found no collusion and no obstruction. And so now the political drumbeat continues through these bogus investigations in the House of Representatives. I say bogus because the Congress is not a prosecutor conducting an investigation. The legitimate role of Congress is for oversight, that is to oversee the legislation we passed, how it actually works in the real world, and whether any additional reforms are made. But the good news is for Texas and for the rest of the country is we're continuing to do the country's work, sort of below the radar, so to speak. For example, yesterday we passed a disaster relief bill that not only helps some of our fellow Americans over in the southeast United States, but also released about $4 billion following Hurricane Harvey that's in here for Texas.
Senator, and before we get to some other legislation, just a little bit more on the whole Mueller investigation and the continuing investigations that are going on. Have you seen anything? As you know, you had Justin Amash in the House who said that he believes, after reading the Mueller report, that he believes the president obstructed justice. Have you seen anything where you think the president obstructed justice?
I have not. And I would tell you that Mr. Amash is, he got exactly what he wanted, which is a whole lot of attention. He's not a guy that has a following. Matter of fact, he's kind of a lone wolf in almost everything he does, and I really don't take that seriously. Of course, the press in D.C. and the Democrats love the fact that somebody who calls himself a Republican would call for impeachment. This is something that's within their power to proceed to do, but of course Nancy Pelosi is reluctant to head down that path because she doesn't want to experience the political backlash that would come from that.
You say that she doesn't want to, and I agree with you that there would be political blowback on this. Is she? What game is she playing then? Is this just politics at its worst? Maybe
it is. It is, and of course, this is. We used between elections that I like to call governing, where we don't go from one election to the next, but that doesn't seem to be the case since the 2016 election. We rolled right into 2018, and now we're rolling into 2020. And I wish we would spend a little bit more time trying to do the nation's business. But Ms. Pelosi does have to try to ride herd on an increasingly radical Democratic Party, and these newly elected House Democrats like AOC and others are pushing her very hard, and she's trying to manage them. And it's, I'm sure, going to take every skill that she's developed over her many years in politics to do that.
Visiting with Senator John Cornyn here on the Chad Hasty Show. Senator, have you read the not fully unredacted Mueller report, but the less redacted version of the Mueller report?
I have.
You have?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, your phone broke up there, so I wanted to make sure that's right.
I'm sorry. Yes, I have.
Okay,
I have.
good. And that's why you also said that you did not see anything in there that convinced you of obstruction of justice. Let's talk about some legislation, Senator. And this is legislation that I think everyone can get behind. Robocalls. We're all sick and tired of them. What is Congress doing to stop robocalls?
Well, if there's one thing that unites Americans, and Republicans, Democrats, and independents, including socialists, it's hatred of robocalls. Certainly that's true in my household. And fortunately, we were able to pass overwhelmingly a bill that gives the Federal Trade Commission additional authority to combat these robocalls. These robocallers have gotten increasingly sophisticated, using a lot of technology, appearing to be who they are not, and calling you from places where they are basically spoofing. And I'm hopeful that we'll provide a little bit of peace and a little bit of relief to the American people, and that can include our leading robocalls. Almost unanimous today.
Senator, when it comes to robocalls, from the information that y'all have, and look, if the legislation passes, that's great. But what is the percentage of robocalls that originate outside of the U.S. versus inside the U.S.?
I do not actually know the answer to that. But, of course, as you know, there's no geographical restriction on where the calls can emanate from. So I suppose that if we were able to block them from in the continental United States, there would still be attempts to try to do this internationally.
Right.
And that would be an escalation in the battle, and I suspect we'd be up to taking that on too.
All right. And I want to ask you about a story. It raised a lot of eyebrows around here, Senator. And that was a headline, I believe it was last week. And I'll read the headline from the Houston Chronicle. Cornyn takes on climate change, says days of ignoring emissions are over. That raised a lot of eyebrows because Republicans and climate change don't always go together. Are you trying to say that there is man-made climate change or global warming or whatever we're calling it this week, and what is your plan here as far as climate change and business?
Well, I want to assure you and your listeners, Chad, I have not drunk the Kool-Aid. I've not gone native DC. Really, this is a response to the Green New Deal that you've seen from the fringe Democrats in Washington D.C., who essentially want to spend hundreds of trillions of dollars and take over the energy sector and the economy and change the way you and I live our daily lives. And of course, it's one thing to be against something, but then you need to say, I think it's responsible to say what you're for. And what I'm for is good old-fashioned American ingenuity and innovation, where our entrepreneurs and small businesses come up with new and creative solutions to these issues. And if you're going to control carbon dioxide emissions, it seems to be a concern. One way you do that is by using more natural gas, which is what we've done in this country, reducing our emissions about 15% since 2007. But I'm also talking about technologies that I've seen used in places outside of Houston where they have zero emissions from a natural gas power plant generating electricity, and where they're able to use the CO2 for enhanced oil recovery. So that's really what I'm talking about. I think the Houston Chronicle used a little license to make it sound like I had bought into the whole idea of climate change and sort of a cult following, and I have not.
Okay, because and the reason I ask, I mean, you know, if there's the way I look at it is if we start talking about climate change and accept what the left puts out there as, you know, the United States is to blame for, you know, the climate changing, and, you know, man is to blame for all of this, and we can start impacting, then they kind of win on the language, don't they? And they, you know, they have another argument to use when talking about things like the Green New Deal.
Well, Chad, I think they've pretty much had the battlefield all to themselves, and they then have been in a position, along with their friends in the mainstream media, accusing us of being anti-science, producing any positive alternative to what they are proposing. What they're proposing, let's not kid ourselves, is a takeover of by the government through regulation, through higher taxes, and a transformation in our way of life, all in pursuit of this goal of eliminating man-made causes for impact on the environment. I think my simple point is, one of the things that dealt with the huge pileup of horse manure in our major cities around the turn of the 19th century, when horse-drawn transportation was the norm, was the internal combustion engine. And what prevented the starvation of millions of people because of increases in the population was innovation in the form of the Green Revolution. What I'm arguing for is focusing on things that actually will address the immediate concern, which are CO2 emissions, and certainly not buying into the whole narrative on climate change, which is essentially our individual freedom and to bigger government and more control.
Very good. Senator John Cornyn, as always, we appreciate your time today, and we'll visit with you later on in the future. Have a good Memorial Day weekend.
You too, Chad. Thanks.
Thank you. That's Senator John Cornyn here on the Chad Hasty Show.